welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin. Oh, today we have a fantastic group of people uh, put together to just speak about dealing with Gen Z. Now, Gen Z, they are the first generation that is totally unplugged. They don't know about wires that go to their telephones. They don't know about antennas on their TV. They don't know what a daytimer is. But what they do know is their life, their existence, everything they do is carried in the palm of their hand on their cell phones. So before we start here, why don't we go around the room and introduce ourselves? Jennifer, why don't you start?
Sure, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jennifer Elliott, Chief Business Officer with Great Performances. Founded in 1980 by Liz Newmark, we're the largest women-owned catering company in New York City. We manage over 3,000 catered events annually, in addition to working with cultural institutions such as Jazz at Lincoln Center, Apollo Theater, Brooklyn Museum, Brooklyn Academy of Music. And there we handle cafes, restaurants, concessions, as well as all of the catering. We also work with different corporations and real estate companies providing daily food services. We operate out of the Bronx. We're a very New York City-based company. I've been at Great Performances for 13 years, and I've held roles in operations, administration, sales, and now I really focus on business development and overall company growth.
Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Karen.
Good morning, everybody. Karen Goodlad here. I'm the chairperson of the Hospitality Management Department at New York City College of Technology. We are part of the sprawling CUNY system here at City Tech. I've been here for over 22 years, a longtime teacher with beverage management background and currently the chairperson of the department. And I'll continue to do this as long as I feel like I can make a difference. And looking forward to this conversation. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Karen. Shelby.
Hey everyone, how are you? I'm Shelby Poole. I own Jackson's Restaurant. It's a 180-seat gastropub located on Long Island in Comac. We've been around for 18 years. We just celebrated our 18th anniversary. I sit on the board of directors for the New York State Restaurant Association. There's so many groups these days. New York State Restaurant Association, which I love. Great organization. If you're not involved in it, I highly recommend it. And because I like to do a lot, I'm also marketing director at Happy Days Dispensary in Farmingdale. And I'm the parent of a Gen Z daughter.
Okay, so you have double information for us. Before we start the program, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First, I'd like to talk about expense reduction analysts. Expense reduction, listen, there is gold hiding in your invoices. If you don't have time to go over with them with a fine-tooth comb, call Ed Flanagan and expense reduction analysts. They will find money that you never know you had laying there. The second is Produce Experience. Produce Experience, if you're looking for the finest in herbs, salads, and tropical produce, Produce Experience is the place to go. That's it. So thank you, sponsors. And let's talk about Gen Z. Like I said, this is the unwired generation. My wife and I sometimes marvel when we're sitting at a restaurant and four people who we think are Gen Zs are sitting around a table. And instead of talking like my wife and I and our friends do, they're looking at their phones. And we always wonder, are they texting each other? Karen, why don't you start?
Sure.
What drives them? What's the difference?
My goodness, the difference. So you say that they're on their phones. Part of that is conversation, right? So it maybe they're talking to other people. Maybe it's stimulating the conversation that's happening there. So it's odd to us, right? We sit, no phones at the table, we talk to each other. But for a lot of people, the information that they're getting out of their phones might drive the conversation. So that's one thing. The other thing is that they've learned to communicate, right? So if the phones aren't there, then the communication doesn't seem to flow because that's what they know. In the classroom here, we often have a no phone policy, put it away and such like that. But then in small groups, we actually say, okay, now let's have small group conversations, bring the phones out if you want to, start research and use this as a topic discussion. So it's different, but they are communicating, they are social, and they are engaging in the world around them.
Okay, thank
But
you.
with this nearby.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. What drives them? What is their hot points? What is the things that make them tick? Shelby.
Well, I think from the start, like there's an opportunity for us to rethink about how we're looking at them. Like even the name of today is dealing with Gen Z, but like they don't have to be dealt with because they're actually like a really cool generation. Like I'm into them. I think that they know what's up. Like I think that we can be learning from them. Like my daughter's a fabulous person. So I think that the thing that makes them tick is that they care. Like they see a world that is not exactly in the best place. They see systems in place that aren't the best. And I think that like because we're an empowered generation that's raising them, we're like you can create change. So they're looking at a life that's completely different at the way that we look at it. Like we are a wired generation. We do plug in. Like I'm as analog as they come, and like they're kind of like doing their own thing. I think that like whatever they're into, like I like it. I think that they're tuned into the things that matter. I think that they have learned, even though they're not using their voices physically at a table, they're using their voices on platforms that have a lot more scope. So, we can leverage that. And I hate to say that, I don't want to take advantage of them. But at the same time, like the level of care that they're putting into the world is like pretty impressive, honestly.
Okay, you mentioned something there that's a hot button with me. You say you don't want to take advantage of them, about leveraging them, but isn't that what business is about? Business is about business, the restaurant business especially, is catering to people's wants and needs so that they come to your place. I'm not talking about taking advantage of them so we can pick their pockets. I'm talking about taking advantage to what they think, how they deal with things, and what they like so that they come to our place. Jennifer, how are you doing that at Great Performances?
Well, I think when I think about, how we're leveraging them and what they bring to the table, I think a few of the communication piece and being included and having a voice and real authentic conversations it's kind of nice. I mean, it's a new thing to bring into the work environment, especially I've been here for 13 years and I remember starting out, you'd work 20-hour days and there's really no expectation that they can do that. They want the flexibility. But I think that being able to bring in more opportunities to collaborate, especially when you're trying to create either retention, if you're looking from a workplace point of view, or on a marketing campaign and really being authentic and really thinking about your mission and your vision and what you're bringing as a company, I think it can really attract those people. But I think it also can make the company better as a whole. So some of the things we've been doing specifically, I would say just in the last year and a half, we've started a monthly newsletter. We have a women's ERG program. We are rolling out a mentorship program in the next month. We have a sports team that we've started for over the summer. So just different ways, but it's not just the Gen Z that are signing up or asking for it. Like once we put it out there to the community as a workforce, we get all kinds of people signing up, and it's just creating interesting ways to bring the company together to create that path forward for them in a career.
Yeah, you have people in your group from 18 to 65.
Yes.
How do
And I
they
did
go
find out
ahead?
20% of our workforce is Gen Z. I asked HR
Okay.
before the call. So I was surprised. I was like, okay, that's a little bit more than I had realized.
So how do you meld what is it, six generations together? You XYZ, millennials, boomers, and Gen Z. How do you fit that puzzle together that keeps everybody energized?
I think twofold. One, it's sort of the nature of the business that we're in. I mean, it's very collaborative because from the sales team, from the culinary team to the ops team to the execution team, I mean, everyone has to work really hand in hand. So there has to be a lot of collaboration to get the end result. And that what is the end result communicated down the chain. So I think naturally that just comes to a company that works like that. But I think, training more programming, getting more people. So I'll be the mentorship program. I did have to go to some of the Gen Xers, and I was like, okay, you're gonna sign up to be a mentor. This is how this is gonna work. And they're excited about it. But it's sort of like, hey, let's bring everybody together, how we can create these programs. But I think training too, also for Gen Z, because they're young. And I think about my coming into the workplace and who are my mentors and things about like how to communicate more formally, and making sure that we're taking the time out to give that feedback and making sure that the older generations are also giving that feedback and maybe open to receiving some of that feedback too, has helped.
I think that's a really good point about the older generations like accepting the feedback. Like I'm a Zennial, right? So I'm like that like time between Gen X and Millennial, which we could have a whole conversation about. But we were raised to like listen and like earn our keep and learn from our elders and not speak when being like if we're not being spoken to, and like that's not the way anymore, particularly post-COVID, particularly Me Too movement. Like as a woman in the workplace, like we want everyone speaking up because systems are broken. So we want people speaking up from the beginning. And I think that as people who are older, we have to accept that like younger people have really good ideas and they're not jaded and they're not, trying to earn their keep. Like we should be empowering those young people to know that like they have a voice. So I love that you're doing collaborative things because I think collaboration is just key.
Karen, can you expand on that?
Yes, I would like to. I want to celebrate the mentorship opportunities that you stated. Please remember that this group of people had either a disrupted college experience or they graduated from college and went into a workforce that was shut down. If you think about our own post-college experiences, we went into the workforce, we had those Thursday night drinks with people, we were able to look around the office and say, okay, well, this is how the boss is interacting with people. This is how my peers are interacting with people. This is how different levels are interacting with these people. But if you graduated in 2020, or if you graduated in 2022, you were entering a workforce where you weren't getting that interaction and probably still not getting that interaction. Because a lot of, the older generation, like, oh, I'll do 2 days from home. Okay, you have to keep that feature for me. So the fact that you're formalizing the mentoring, that you're bringing in a team, I think will help elevate a lot of the younger people to make sure that they feel like they're part of your organization. So congratulations and celebrate that.
But part of that might be we also don't really have a work from home. We're flexible. Like if you need to take time off, have doctor's appointment, but the nature of our work is everybody's back in the office just because we have to be here physically to do the jobs. And so we do have a lot of people in the office, and they do also get together as groups, without on their own.
Okay. Fred, you have anything to say? You've been
No, but Cheryl just asked, could we define what the age group is that we're talking about? For those who don't know, are we talking about 18 to 30? Are we talking about what's this age group look like? The definition of Gen X.
Gen Xers were born 1997 to 2012.
Okay.
27 to 12, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So we still, how do we get these people who have all these different ideas? You put them on a project. How do you get them used to each other? How do you get them so that they work as a team? If one group is, listening and everybody else is talking, how do we get that to work? How do you motivate people to join a team?
I mean, that's just like a general leadership. They're still going to be inspired by good leaders. That's really like,
let me break in for 1 second.
A leader who's engaging them, a leader who is listening to them. Like, I think that they're not they're not as glued to their phones as we're thinking. In fact, a lot of them are getting like pagers and phones that don't have screens because they recognize that like there's more to life than Instagram.
So
So
look, we're all leaders here. We're all people. We're in our position because we're leaders. What does a restaurateur do? He has one place. The place was given to him by his father. They're doing things the way the greatest generation did them. And now you're the senior man or woman in the organization. How do you meld a group of people that start at 16, 17 years old to work as one? How do you motivate people like that as a leader?
I'm a second generation restaurant owner, and my daughter is actively interested in being a part of it, which I've already put a stop to. Sorry to everyone in the
Okay.
room.
Okay.
Why?
No,
Why?
why?
Yeah.
Food costs, labor costs, trajectories that are just not realistic, wanting her to be able to go on vacations, wanting her to be able to travel and live a life and not be tied down. Like she can be in the industry, but like let her go work for Great Performances and be a high level manager there. I just think being an entrepreneur and a business owner right now, like the set of challenges and until some things fundamentally shift, or I don't know, I'm trying to look at her investment in life and say,
Yeah.
like, I want her to get to live. Um, and I recognize that I'm an outlier. Some people, like, I sometimes think about my generation-ness with my father, and, you bringing up, like, how do you get them to listen? You get them to listen by listening. So you have to hear what they want to say and play off of that. I think that there's this shift right now where, like, we have the opportunity to be using people in the way that they're best utilized. Like people go through a school system. I've been using ADHD as a good example, but because a lot of that's a thing about Gen Z, right? They all have something. They're all neuro interesting. Everybody's neurodivergent in some way. That's like a very hot conversation within that generation. And, we're saying it like it's a bad thing. But in the restaurant business, it's a great thing. I've had ADHD my whole life, and it's been like, well, challenging in school, but then you go to the restaurant and on Saturday night, there's nothing better than having ADHD. It's the best thing in the world because you get out of the weeds faster than anybody. So, I think that like just recognizing people's skill sets and putting them in the places where they can naturally excel. If somebody's great with people, put them in the front of the house. If somebody needs to be, told what to do and they're going to follow those instructions perfectly, put them in the kitchen. So like it's about finding the ways to utilize people so that they're doing the best job that they can do so that they can feel good about themselves. It's more about shifting the focus on them and how they can do their best in the workplace than it is about like what works for us.
That's very Vince Lombardi, what you just said. Vince once said, and sorry, Vince, if I misquote you, the sign of a great leader is the one who looks what he has and puts people in the right place. And, sometimes we say we hire somebody to fill a hole, fill a need. I truly believe if you hire the best people, some way it'll work its way out. Charles, unmute yourself for a second. You're
Good morning.
sitting, I see you sitting back and you've got that pose that you're thinking. Okay. What's going on in your head right now?
Well, I think actually Shelby just nailed it. I mean, frankly, for those of us that teach and those of us that are leaders and are in the workforce, you can't put a round hole into a square peg. Those days are gone. We've got, as somebody mentioned, we've got 5 or 6 generations working. We've always kind of had that problem, but the reality is that it's a slightly different problem now. This problem has existed forever. If you are the employer who insists that your employees do what you want, you're going to be a failure. I mean, that's just a fact of life.
All right. All right. All right. Peter Herrero, you're hiding in the back someplace. Unmute. You there, Peter? I guess he's not. Guess he's not.
Can I
So,
jump on what Shelby said? Just
yes,
one
go
more
ahead,
thing
please.
on, thinking about roles. One of the things, sort of stepping a little bit outside of the restaurant, but when, defining people's roles when they're in a meeting or in a group setting, collaboratively, but like, let's say I bring younger people with me to sales pitches, and I'll let everybody know this is, my colleague, and she's just here to observe and learn. And that way I feel like once everyone understands why they're in the room and you can help guide it a little bit, I think everyone feels more comfortable communicating and collaborating, knowing why they're there.
Okay, okay. So,
I have a question for
go
Karen.
ahead.
Is any of this classroom a classroom learning opportunity, or are these all natural instincts somebody either has or doesn't have?
Oh, no.
Or how has
classroom.
education evolved to
No.
answer?
This is classroom. This is classroom.
Yeah.
Larry, when you were setting up your last question, you had, he received the company from his father, and he. But guess what? That's not what these people are looking for. And this generation is much more diverse in their backgrounds and in where they want to go. So what are we doing in the classroom? We are really embracing place-based learning. So if we can bring students to places where they may not go on their own, then that's huge, right? And providing them opportunity to talk and network with individuals. There are shorter modules, if you would. So we are going to have a lecture and then small group discussion, and then we'll have students talking out and such like that, sharing out rather what they want to say. Other classroom opportunities are that, a lot of our teachers are also diverse, both in age and background and race and such like that. So the more that they're interacting with the teachers as well, I think that gives them exposure. And with our student body too, they may not have that role model where, they can see themselves in the workplace in a way that they will find leadership. So everything is a learning opportunity, 100%. We bring these concepts into the classroom. And but also if you go back, so even like when I graduated college and I went into the workforce and I worked at the Plaza Hotel, and here I am, this, brand new manager with all these great ideas, and I was managing or, working next to you, because there's no way that I was managing them, people that were waiting tables for 45 years, and they're like, oh, that's nice, little girl, you're going to come and tell me what to do? No, I had to listen and learn from them. And that's the same thing as today. They're going to go into the workforce, and some of those people are going to be there for 40 years. I've been doing this for 22 years. I never thought I'd be in one workplace for that long.
Okay. So, we've been speaking about people we work with. Okay, we've been concentrating on that, and I finally understood now. I understand now that it's not so much of a problem; it's just a different way of doing things. But what about the people that walk in the door? What about um, the what about the people who are going to dine in your restaurant? What are their likes, dislikes, and way of doing? The way they want to do business in a restaurant? How do you remold into a position where they're comfortable? Because truly, every day they control more and more of the money that's going into the economy. So, if you're doing things the old way, remember Darwin, change or die. And I think you see restaurants now where they didn't change and they're going. I think Red Lobster is filing for Chapter 11. I just heard it on the radio today.
That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. The biscuits go. I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, so
I think the most important thing to note from a restaurant operation perspective is that Gen Z does not like alcohol. And that's something that like we historically as an industry have leaned on our liquor cost and our opportunity in the liquor space. And, it's an extremely powerful industry, the alcohol industry, and they're scrambling right now. So, how are we reacting to that? And how are we making concessions when that's something that we know is something that has traditionally driven our sales. So, I think that the mocktail menu is something that you can be paying attention to, or, alcohol-free happy hours, things like that. Karen, I think you briefly mentioned networking. Like, networking is a huge thing. So like bringing people in ways that are not the traditional ways of looking at a restaurant. If you look at where people are parking themselves, like they park themselves at like a really cool coffee shop. That's like the model that is the most crowded, at least on Long Island right now. Like if you have a cool coffee shop, like it's hard to score a space to do work there. Like, oh, that's the other thing. Everyone's working all the time. Like there's nobody that just like takes off. If you are, you live in a van and you're the icon of what life should be like, and you're traveling around and doing the things. But if you're in the workforce, you're pretty much working like 7 days a week, and there is no on and off. There's no 9 to 5. You get emails at 10 o'clock at night. And the places that you are going to probably do that as Gen Z are like coffee shops or places that are inviting and not expensive to spend some time at. So, I think I've been trying to think at Jackson's of like, how can I shift my model to be more inviting to people, that they don't have to spend an entree's worth of money there and, leave immediately after their meal? Like, how can I make it that somebody can park themselves and I can just pour their coffee all day and they can have an outlet and get their work done? And then the non-alcoholic is a big component.
So how are you working with that? So if your business has survived on selling food and alcohol, how can you switch to leisure time at your place?
I have no idea. It's a code I haven't cracked. Ask Druthers Coffee down the street that's got a line out the door with their egg salad sandwich and egg sandwich on the menu and a muffin, and that's it. Like, decrease my menu items, like decrease the amount of items, increase the amount of shareable items, increase the amount of like protein heavy, light carb, like sustainable energy type of items that people can just grab and, have a conversation over. Increase coffee options.
More communal tables.
Communal tables,
right?
for
More
sure.
communal tables,
Yeah.
bar-like things, bar-like. I was just in Portland, and all along the window, which would be prime real estate for two tops or fours, it was just a bar. It was just one straight row, and I sat down and talked to the people all around, and there were like 3 restaurants that I walked into, and I did that. And I think more independence too, more independent travelers. So I travel on my own a lot, and that was one of the opportunities that I had to meet people and chat.
Okay.
And we're trying to do more storytelling, how we're telling our story in different ways around sustainability and women owned and our dedication to community and what we've been, doing for New York over the last 40 years, and how we really market that to try to set ourselves apart, where before it was sort of something a little bit more in the background. And every time we're doing a marketing campaign, we've just started, I'm like, okay, we have to find someone under the age of 30 who works here and ask them what they think about it and get their feedback.
I like that you're asking them about them and getting their feedback, but necessarily putting them in charge of that is not necessarily the case, right? There's difference between posting for your personal self and then posting and creating a marketing campaign and strategy for your business.
100%,
right? That is a completely different thing. So that juxtaposition is important.
Yeah. Agreed.
But posting for yourself on behalf of your workplace or the places that you're visiting, that's a great way also to be engaging. So I think everyone loves an Instagrammable moment, and having in your establishment some way to like have somebody like really drive home that they were in your place is something that you can leverage for sure.
Okay, so you hit a hot button there. A lot, I'm not going to say most, but many restaurants don't even take people's emails. They have the Instagram is something somebody else uses. It's so. What is the change that must be made to attract a new generation of diners?
TikTok is the #1 search engine in the world. So, everybody, like, you can naysay every new addition. I don't like it. I don't like the amount of platforms that, you kind of are obligated. You're not obligated, but if you want to really make moves, then, you need to be like leveraging all of these platforms. If you can ignore it, or you can be like, I'm going to be open to anything new. Like Discord came around and I was like, I do not have time to sit here 24/7 and like comment on people's stuff. There's Reddit, there's all these places that like you have to decide who is your demographic that you're looking for and where are they talking. Like you're not scrolling through your email over and over and over. You are scrolling through your feeds over and over and over.
Okay, so
Good point.
first, how do you find out what people want to communicate on?
Hey, what about things like trivia and Keno and things that keep people involved? And even things like sometimes you'll see magicians when people are waiting with small families. Is there or music? Is there an entertainment piece to this that could drive some of this?
Larry, and in the whole room, I think there's some amazing leaders in the room. It's an honor to sit and listen to what you're going through and how you're managing this. I'm looking at this from a marketing tech side. Of course, Instagram, of course, TikTok. Yes, they're the biggest engines in the world because everybody's on them. So, you're fishing in an ocean. It's very difficult to fish in an ocean to catch the people that you want. This new generation of consumers are conscious consumers in waiting. They have an absolute hunger to place their spending to align to their values. They want to know what's going on in your establishment. They want to know your values to see whether it aligns with them. They want to know about the provenance and the thought behind a product. Where are you getting things from? Is it sustainable? What's that thought process? They have a lack of information today. And if you can do it through infotainment, as in entertaining information, that's all the better. But they're a little bit lost because of this whole sea of social media, which gives them masses of entertainment, but no real information. So we're working, and we're not the only ones. There's a lot of people working on new ways to get information across. But we're doing it from the approach that authentic communication is key. And look inwards. Your people are your greatest asset. Your how you source is your greatest asset. The more selective you are, the more you're going to give these new diners what they want. Yes, there is a vast difference in the alcohol consumption in that group, but there's still people who drink, but they want the more natural.
Has that been replaced by legalized marijuana, or is that the anticipation?
I think it's two completely different conversations.
Okay.
Okay, Shelby.
When people dine, this new generation want to know where it's come from, what the thought process is, who are the people behind the plate, and the places. People, places, product, provenance, all the keys.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you. Shelby, you can speak to Fred's question, I guess, better than anybody.
Yeah. First of all, Julie, thank you for that. And I agree. I think like nailing home your message and then using every possible way, like put the same message on TikTok, Instagram, your email, your website, your in-store displays, your training, with how your staff is going to communicate. Keep that all as cohesive as possible. Everybody seems to get tripped up on that. Like, we need different messaging, but it's like, no, pick your messaging wisely and just spread it around. As far as cannabis, I think it's like an excuse that the bev alc industry is making, like, oh, sales are down, so it's got to be because weed is legal. I'm a cannabis user, and beverage sales based on me in life has not shifted since legalization. Someone who's going to drink is going to drink. Someone who's going to smoke is going to smoke. People drink and smoke. I know that that's like this crazy notion that people can't seem to grasp, but that they do coexist. Not yet officially, but it's real. It's really happening.
So can they drink and smoke in your restaurant? I mean, if that's what they.
Well, in my restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm prepared to fight the big fight, so they can. They can consume, and that is not regulated. I really have no problem saying it at this point. I'm ready to put it on the line, because I think that responsible consumption, no matter what the vice is something that needs to be communicated. And that does apply to Gen Z, because the schools are not teaching my daughter about the safe consumption of cannabis, and that's not right.
Right.
They're saying, like, just don't use it at all. And if someone has a parent that's a medical patient, that's just an awful message to be sending to children. But we're negotiating at the dispensary right now. We're negotiating a sponsorship for a music festival, and they upped the cost because they need to compensate for their liquor sales going down. And they insisted that the average consumer, if you take every attendee of the event, there's one less beer being sold for every attendee for the event, or 1.5 beers or something. And they're asking us to compensate for that. But this is a sober, curious generation. So it is not about replacing alcohol with cannabis. It's about replacing pharmaceuticals with cannabis, or replacing misery and anxiety with cannabis. So they're not mutually exclusive, but when being boiled down to something, it tends to take the heat.
I guess what I'm asking is there a way to send a message to the Gen X population that it's okay to come to my place and smoke weed and drink and enjoy?
Well, can they smoke? Before we answer that question, are you allowed at least in New York, are you allowed to light up anything in your restaurant?
No, so you're not, for a private event, if you have cigars at your event, like, think about a wedding that you've gone to that has cigar rollers, like, people are smoking cigars indoors. There's a Clean Air Act. It came about, like, you remember diner smoking sections. The Clean Air Act came about because they wanted to protect employees. So we have done 2 indoor consumption events that were private events. We had the employees, they knew that it was an indoor consumption event. We kept the doors open. They were wildly successful, and the employees asked to do more of them. I'm kind of taking that and running with it one day a week, like maybe a couple times a month. Yeah. Nothing crazy. I'm not shifting my model just yet. But I do make the outdoor area consumption friendly. And I also look at consumption as more than just smoking. So there are canned beverages, and that's a huge category that we're going to see growing in the next few years. I have no problem with allowing, you can get a hemp license right now and have hemp-derived THC in your bar and restaurant, and that's legal. There are no regulations released regarding consumption thus far. So really, other than the Clean Air Act, there's nothing saying yes or no. The Office of Cannabis Management just hasn't released any regulations yet.
Okay.
So another question came up in my head. So now we've identified the generation. We've identified what they like to do and what they don't like to do. All right. So what does the restaurateur do who has been a classical restaurant? And I mean, they've been pushing out meals now for 23, 24 years, and they hit a clientele, and all of a sudden they've realized that the money in the future is not with the boomers, because we're getting smaller and smaller in population every day. and they have to start switching to a more contemporary model where, you know, the other generations are becoming more and more important. What moves can they make to start attracting the younger generations? Anybody?
Can I jump in here? This is really no different than what we were talking about earlier. The restaurant business is evolution, not revolution. The fact is that we have a responsibility to serve not what we want, but what our customers want. And the successful restaurateurs have always done that. So would you go open a restaurant tomorrow that looked like Latesse did 30 years ago? Of course not. You know, but if you look at Eric Repair at Le Bernardin, you know, he doesn't have tablecloths on the table at lunch because people don't want them. It's a more casual appearance. The food is still the same, and it's at a lower price point. You know, looking at what we call fine dining today is totally different than what fine dining was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Or if you compare it to 30 years ago, it looks like something really different. But the fact is that whether we're talking about employees and how they react, whether we're talking about guests, this is what we've been doing through all of the history. And it's really no different. The fact that this particular generation has, the generation we're talking about, has less desires on alcohol. Somebody mentioned mocktails. There has never been a bigger time in the industry for great mocktails. And if you don't have a mocktail program, you know, Jennifer talked earlier about storytelling. Man, if you're not doing it, you're way behind the times.
Okay, so storytelling is a function of professional waiters. They're the people that told the story. So how do we move from what's gone on since the pandemic, where we have people holding a job and turning them into storytellers?
Larry, have Joyce patch her and have her ask her question.
She can patch herself in. Go ahead,
She asked
Joyce.
this very question.
Go ahead, Joyce.
So
Start.
I was curious, how is it different for the application and the hiring process for this generation compared to other generations? You know, we used to just be able to walk into a restaurant and say, "Do you need someone to work?" You know, how do you how
You can still do that.
Yeah.
We'll
And
take
we've
it.
invested a lot more in training. We've hired a service director who really manages and guides that part of our work and the storytelling and how people are coming across to a guest and all the different experiences that we want a guest to have. And a lot more training and taking training a lot more seriously, where it's not, here's the handbook and sign this and then go start your job. But really like specific training for each type of employee that we have. And it's a lift and it's a lot of work to put that together and to be consistent about it. We found that over the last few years with investing in it, even just taking small steps, it's making improvement not only in how their employees are with the guests and with each other, but also the employee experience too.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing I want to ask is, I remember we used to have career fairs where you'd go into the high school or the colleges, especially for the hospitality industry. Are those still going on? And if so, are you participating? And is it different today, or is it pretty much the same?
Karen?
I'll start from us, and then I do want to hear from the others. But so we stopped doing job fairs and graduate fairs for a while, and for whatever reason, somebody made that decision. But they've been brought back now post pandemic. So last year was the first year that they brought back both a career fair and a graduate fair, and people are coming. And we, on the other hand, are going to the high schools as well in greater. With greater diligency, I guess is a good way of saying that. There are simply less people coming to college, right? Just by the number of humans being born in America, right? So there's just that. The pandemic has really hurt us as far as attracting new students. So we are doing it on both ends. We're going to high schools. High schools are coming to visit us because the high schools are really encouraging their students to go to college. And then we're bringing in job fairs and graduate fairs.
Back to colleges and things like that. I remember when I went to college, there were a lot of philosophy majors and history majors and political science majors that, got jobs because there were just so many jobs. But I noticed with my son's education, they picked specialty places. They knew they had a path that was in their head, and they may not stick to that path, but they stick someplace close to it. Are you finding that when people come to school that they have an idea of what they want to do and where they want to go?
It may not be accurate as to what the reality is when they graduate, but yes, they come in and they say, I'm here because of this. And I think that that's important because they at least see themselves in college and they see themselves having a career once they get in their first kitchen and they're standing for 4.5 hours and they're like, oh, this is a lot. Like, well, yeah, shift is going to be 8-9 hours. Then they start to open their eyes and think about, different opportunities. But again, that's college, right? How many of us went into college knowing exactly what they wanted? I transferred from a community college to a full-time college, a 4-year college, and I changed my major twice. And that part of exploring is, I think, really important. But just to touch a little also though on the question about the hiring, and just to go a little deeper in that, there's an idea that about like marketing you. So it's no longer the resume, right? Yes, you can take your resume and walk into a place and say, hey, I need a job for those entry level positions, but the whole persona. So what do you look like on social media? What does your LinkedIn profile look like? How are you elevating who you are? Because I have to say, Jennifer, Shelby, I didn't find you on LinkedIn, but Jennifer, and I think somebody else, Julie, like I looked on you on LinkedIn. It's that's part of your
You should look at mine. I worked really hard on it.
I found you, Shelby.
On LinkedIn. I didn't find you on LinkedIn. So
yes.
I'll find you.
Okay. We're coming to that time of the show where time becomes our enemy, and we're nearing the end. You've thrown out an awful lot of information today, and I thank you all for taking time. I thank you all for the audience participation. I just thank all of you for taking some time and being with us. Before we go, I just want to go around the room and just leave that one little tidbit, that one thing that people can take away with them and think about how can we do this. All right, Jennifer, why don't you start?
I think it's community, it's conversation, it's feedback, but I think it's feedback both ways, like learning how to give feedback. I struggle to give feedback. I think the way we got feedback as I was coming up in age in my career was different. So really being able to give open, honest feedback, but then also to communicate how you want to be communicated to is something that, I'm always learning of, like letting people know, and my team and my Gen Z team of like, this is how I want to be communicated to, and always creating those moments. I love taking the team to like sales pitches, as I said before, with me just to learn and observe, because I think it keeps them engaged.
Okay, Karen.
You kind of took what I was going to say, because one thing that I've learned about this generation is that they do know how to share their feelings. So I'll go into my second point then. I had to back up. Instead of dealing with Gen Z, we better embrace and elevate them, because Gen Alpha is smaller and even more diverse in their experience growing up than we do. So, let's celebrate the Gen Zers, so that they can celebrate the Alphas, because it's going to be even harder to understand them.
Okay, Shelby.
I live my life by a rising tide raises all ships. So don't discount young people. Listen to them, and don't listen to them and take their ideas and walk away without showing gratitude for new ideas and young people. Like, I think gratitude is just, if you could take one thing away, like show gratitude whenever possible, because you don't know what that's going to do for a person. Like elevate those voices and celebrate them, because they're really the ones that matter.
Okay, Fred.
Make people feel good about themselves. Do what Mr. Dorn talked about, which is it really isn't about whether somebody's a Gen X or a boomer. It's about listening to everybody's needs and doing a great job of responding to the entire community. And if you do that, things will work.
Thank you, Fred. I quoted Vince Lombardi before, and I think this is probably going to be the first time in a webinar that the moderator quoted Vince Lombardi and Abby Hoffman, in the same hour. Abby Hoffman once wrote, "We are the people our parents warned us about." When we're looking about dealing with Gen Z, it's not Gen Z that's the problem. It's us. We are the people our parents warned us about. It's our ideas that are being challenged. It's our way of doing things that are being challenged. And like Vince Lombardi said, if you take what's offered to you and make the best of it, you're going to have a winning team. So, but before we say our goodbyes, I just want to reach back to the sponsors and thank Ed Flanagan and Expense Reduction Analysts for sponsoring this show. Remember, there is gold in those invoices. Don't just take them, count the number of boxes and stick it on a pin. Call Expense Reduction Analysts. They will help you find gold in those invoices and produce experience for the finest in salads, herbs, and tropical produce experience. So we're going to be back in 2 weeks. And we'd love to see you all here again. I want to thank each and every person that took time out of their day to be with us today. And there's only 2 more things to say. Everyone, stay positive, test negative. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day, guys.
Thank you so much, everybody.